The crack of a rifle split the afternoon stillness of Cedar Creek, the report echoing off the false-fronted buildings before a shower of glass rained down from the general store window. Grace Barkley flinched, dropping low behind a water trough, her pulse thundering in her ears. At just 22, she had already grown far too accustomed to the sound of gunfire in this small Montana town, and each time it happened, she wondered whether fate might decide she had heard her last shot. "Inside, Miss Barkley!" Sheriff Tanner barked from his crouch behind a hitching post. "This ain't a fit place for you." Grace smoothed the faded calico stretched across her knees and nudged her wire-rimmed spectacles back up her nose. "With all due respect, Sheriff," she thought grimly, "I've yet to find a corner of this town that feels like a fit place for me." It was 1879, and though Grace carried herself with dignity, her name was spoken in Cedar Creek more often with pity than respect. Not for sins or scandal, but for rejection, over and over again. As the sheriff dragged off the half-drunk miner who had thought it wise to settle grievances with bullets, Grace rose, dusted off her dress, and gathered her scattered parcels. With chin held high, she walked on, trailed by whispers sharp enough to cut. "There she goes," muttered Mrs. Henderson to her friend outside the millinery shop. "Poor soul's been turned away by every eligible fellow from here clear to Helena. My Thomas says she reads too many books." Mrs. Collins sniffed. "No man wants a wife who'll argue she's cleverer than him." Grace forced her face into calm composure, though every word pricked like a thorn. 7 times she had been courted, 7 times abandoned before vows could be spoken. Excuses varied, her plainness, her opinions, her love of learning, or the debts her father had left behind when fever carried him off. The reasons differed, but the result never did. Grace Barkley, left unwanted. So it was little surprise when, rounding a corner, she nearly collided with Elijah Palmer, the banker's son and her most recent heartbreak. He fumbled with his hat. "Miss Barkley, I trust you are well." "Quite well, Mr. Palmer," she answered coolly. "And how is Miss Jenkins? I hear congratulations are in order." He colored, cleared his throat. "Yes, well, things move quickly sometimes." Her steps carried her toward the schoolhouse where she taught, the one place where she felt some measure of belonging. But even that post hung by a thread. The school board had begun muttering about moral standing and the impropriety of a woman so consistently jilted. Rumors clung to her like burrs. Was something wrong with Grace Barkley? Something that sent men running? In a town like Cedar Creek, such whispers could strangle a teacher's future as surely as poverty. Inside the empty classroom, she finally let her mask drop. Shoulders trembling, she wept into her hands, whispering to the bare walls, "I cannot stay here. I simply cannot." That night at her kitchen table, Grace unfolded a letter with fingers that shook. Her cousin Martha, writing from Willow Springs 200 miles west, offered a lifeline, a new settlement, a desperate need for a teacher, $30 a month, a fresh start. Grace traced the words with her fingertip, a fresh start. By dawn, her mind was made up. She packed what little she owned, her father's books, her mother's silver brush, her grandmother's quilt meant for a wedding day that never came. With her savings and the money from selling her father's home, she bought passage on a westbound stagecoach. As Cedar Creek faded behind her, she pressed her forehead to the window glass and let out a breath she felt she'd been holding for years. Whether Willow Springs held promise or only more disappointment, she couldn't yet know. But for the first time in months, hope stirred faintly in her chest. The choices, Finn insisted, were his to make and live by. As they strolled back toward the cabin, his hand brushed against Grace's more than once. Not quite a full touch, but enough to remind her he was beside her. To her surprise, the nearness didn't unsettle her at all. "I need to confess something," Finn said as the house came into view. Grace's steps faltered. "After meeting you on the trail, I asked a few questions around town." Her heart lurched. Had the whispers from Cedar Creek traveled even here? "Nothing untoward," he added quickly, seeing her tension. "I just wanted to be sure I wasn't intruding on another man's claim by calling on you." Relief rushed through her, and she managed to ask, "And what exactly did you discover?" "That you came here alone, that you've earned respect as a teacher, and that, according to your cousin, your apple pies are the finest in 3 territories." His eyes twinkled. Though I've yet to confirm that myself. Grace laughed, shoulders relaxing. Martha stretches the truth. My pies are nothing extraordinary. Well then, he said softly, I suppose I'll have to taste one before I believe it. And if you'll allow it, I'd like to keep calling on you, Grace, to know you better. His plain-spoken request startled her. Courtship, in her experience, was usually a dance of suggestion and silence. Finn's directness felt both refreshing and disarming. I would like that, she admitted, though she added quietly, but I should warn you, I'm not practiced at this. It was only half the truth. She couldn't yet reveal the painful history of rejections that shadowed her, not when what they had was still so new. That makes two of us, Finn replied, his candor steady and warm. I've been too busy building something worth sharing to learn much about sharing it. His words lingered with Grace long after he walked her home that night, and as the weeks unfolded, he became a constant figure in her life. Sometimes he brought small tokens, fresh eggs, a volume of poetry, or flowers gathered along the trail. Other times he came empty-handed, content to sit with her, swap stories, or hear about the children she taught. She found herself anticipating his visits more and more, though the growing feelings frightened her. One crisp autumn evening, the two of them sat side by side on her porch, watching the horizon blaze with sunset colors. Finn reached for her hand. Grace, he began, hesitating for once. I've been calling on you for nearly 4 months now. She knew precisely how long, 17 weeks and 3 days, but simply nodded. In that time, he continued, thumb tracing circles on her hand. I've come to admire your mind, your devotion to the children, your gentleness. I'm not skilled with fancy words, but I know this much. My heart is yours. Her breath caught. She had heard such declarations before, only to be abandoned. What are you saying, Finn? I love you, Grace Barkley. And if you'll have me, I want to court you properly, with marriage in mind. The words she had dreamed of left her trembling, torn between joy and fear. Rising quickly, she wrapped her arms around herself. You don't know everything about me, she whispered. He rose too, giving her space. Then tell me, I'm listening. The moment she had dreaded had come. Back in Cedar Creek, I was engaged, she forced out. Not once, but 7 times, and 7 times the men walked away. She stared at the ground as the shame spilled out. Too plain, too opinionated, too poor, they had said. She had become the town's cruel joke, the woman no man would marry. When she finally lifted her eyes, she braced for disgust. Instead, she found anger, not at her, but for her. 7 men, Finn said slowly, proved they lacked honor. That's no failing of yours. Her voice shook. If you're serious about me, you deserve to know. Maybe there's something in me that drives men away. 2 strides closed the gap. He held her hands firmly. Grace Barkley, those men failed you, nothing more. My word isn't cheap. If I tell you I love you, it's because I do. If I promise courtship with marriage in mind, it's because I've weighed it carefully. He touched her cheek gently. I can't erase what they did, but I can vow this. I keep my promises. Tears blurred her vision. His fierce defense soothed a wound she had carried for years. I want to believe, she whispered. Then take your time, he said softly. We'll move at the pace you need. Looking at him, the cowboy who had entered her life like an answer she'd never dared to pray for, she finally nodded. Yes, Finn Westfield. Yes to courtship. We'll see where it leads. His smile broke like dawn across his face. Slowly, reverently, he kissed her, sealing the beginning of what would change her life forever. Grace blinked back tears as Finn's lips brushed hers, the kind of kiss that carried both reverence and quiet promise. For so long she had wondered if she would ever know what it felt like to truly belong to someone. And now, standing beneath the glow of lantern light with this steadfast cowboy before her, she finally understood. Something inside her shifted, fragile walls crumbling under the weight of sincerity. Winter swept across Willow Springs with brutal force, cutting the town off from the outside world. Snow piled high against cabin doors, Winds howled like restless spirits, and days blurred into nights by the fire. Still, Finn never failed to make his way to Grace, sometimes trapped in town for days at a stretch when storms blocked the roads to his ranch. Those stolen days became treasures, each one weaving their lives closer together. One stormy evening in January, when neighbors had gathered at Martha and James's parlor to wait out the blizzard, Finn's eyes sought hers across the lamplight. Later, when the guests had gone and the house grew quiet, he drew her to the window where snow swirled thick and wild outside. His voice was low, steady, intimate. "My father used to say you can't judge a man by the way he behaves when the skies are clear," he murmured. "You find out who he is when the storm hits." Grace's heart beat faster as he reached into his coat pocket. His hands trembled slightly as he opened a small velvet box to reveal a simple gold band crowned with a single pearl. "This belonged to my mother. She wanted it passed down to the woman I chose to marry." Her breath caught. "Grace Barkley," he said, sinking to one knee, the storm's roar muffled by the walls around them. "I've loved you from the moment I understood who you are. I don't want fair weather without you, and I don't want to face storms without you either. Will you be my wife?" The world seemed to still. She could hear her own heartbeat, could feel the weight of every disappointment she had ever carried pressing against her ribs. Only now, something stronger pushed back. "Hope." "Yes," she whispered, then louder, surer. "Yes, Finn Westfield, I'll marry you." Relief and joy lit his face as he slipped the ring onto her finger, his kiss sealing the vow. Martha's gasp from the doorway brought laughter and tears as she rushed to embrace them. Soon there were congratulations, brandy poured in celebration, and warmth that seemed to push back the very storm outside. 2 weeks later, despite snow still clinging to the hills, the small church of Willow Springs glowed with candles and evergreen boughs. Grace wore a gown Martha had helped her stitch, deep green wool, trimmed with lace that had once belonged to her mother. Finn stood tall in a new suit, his blue eyes never leaving her face. When he spoke his vows, his voice was unwavering, his words plain but powerful, and Grace, listening, felt the last fragments of fear dissolve into certainty. Their wedding feast spilled into the town hall, filled with laughter, fiddles, and dancing that stretched long into the night. For the first time, Grace wasn't the subject of whispers or pity. She was a wife, a woman cherished openly, and her heart soared with gratitude. Later, in the quiet of their new home at Silver Creek Ranch, nervousness fluttered through her as Finn drew her close. He sensed it instantly, his touch gentle. "There's no rush," he murmured. "All the time in the world, Grace." But she smiled, laying a trembling hand against his cheek. "I'm ready, Finn. Ready because it's you." Their first night together was tender, halting at times, filled with discovery and care. And when morning light filtered through the curtains, Grace knew without doubt their love would only deepen with each season they faced side by side.